I mean, similar to how I experienced it during COVID, it's just finding a way to enjoy the sport because if you're not enjoying it anymore, or there's no reason for you to love what you're doing, then I don't think it's worth it at that point. But just finding that enjoyment. And then also on top of that, like you said, setting goals, like setting reasonable goals, but at the same time, really focusing on the progress over the goals because it is hard to make all your goals in life, especially if they're really tangible, like making that height on a pole vault. Whatever progress you can find is really important as well because sometimes you don't reach those goals as quick as you want to.
Welcome to our Sport Fuels Life podcast, where we're bringing you interviews with coaches and athletes at the top of their game.
This is a community to support coaches, athletes, and fans who share a passion for making the world a better place through athletics.
We're your hosts. I'm Megan.
And I'm Scott. Welcome
Welcome
to
to
Sport
Sport
Fuels
Fuels Life.
Life.
All right, today on our Sport Fuels Life podcast, we're here with Shelby Barrett.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to dive in and learn a little bit more about your story. I know that we have a pretty unique story. You went to the University of Alabama, a Paralympian, and we're just so excited to learn a little bit more about you. And I'll kind of open the conversation. If you want to just maybe start with how you got into wheelchair tennis.
Of course. So I am originally from Hawaii, which is kind of a small island with a small community, and I was born with my disability, which is spina bifida, which essentially means that I have less muscle and sensory function from my waist below. So I was kind of going on like a normal kid, going to school, but then when it came to PE classes, it actually was a little difficult as I started to get older. I was a little bit slower than my classmates, and I wasn't able to participate in a lot of things. So my PE teacher introduced me to a PE specialist, and she introduced me to a wheelchair, and it kind of like opened my eyes as to what was possible out there, and I was introduced to the world of adapted sports. So my first sport that I actually tried was basketball. But I always tell everybody, in order to be good at basketball, you need to be able to shoot the ball into the hoop and I'm not very good at that. So, around that time, my brother and my cousin, they were kind of trying out tennis, and I just wanted to be just like them. So I found a team in tennis. It's actually very unique. You don't have to have both sides of the court have people in wheelchairs. So I was able to play with an able-bodied team and peers of my age, and then from there, I just fell in love with the sport.
Is really cool. And I guess going back a little bit further in time, what was that initial introduction to being in a wheelchair like? It seems like it was overall pretty positive for you, but were you in a wheelchair just for sports, or was it like going from no wheelchair to I'm in a wheelchair all the time?
It was gradual. At first it was introduced to me just for sports, just because I can walk a little bit, with the help of leg braces and crutches. But as I got older and I needed to do more things like going through a big store or going to a mall, and then even my high school campus was pretty extensive. I started to use it as a tool to help me get around, and it actually made me become more independent because I was able to free up my hands from walking, and I was able to do things like open my own doors and carry my own things. So I'm actually a full-time wheelchair user now. So I don't do that much walking unless it's absolutely necessary. But it's actually been a really good change for my life that helped me find my independence.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's certainly led you down an awesome path. So I guess going forward a little bit, so clearly you really hit it off with tennis, and you ended up at the University of Alabama, right?
Mhm.
So how'd you end up finding or choosing that school?
It's actually really interesting because I didn't end up there when I was a freshman. When I was a senior in high school, I was looking around, and at the time, there was only one university with a wheelchair tennis program. And so that school did not offer me enough money to be an out-of-state student as well as continue my training. So I stayed at the University of Hawaii for about 2 years. And while I was at a tournament, the athletic director approached me because he was building his tennis team. And he said, I would like you to be our first full-time athlete. And he offered me a scholarship that was much better than the original offer I had gotten. And so I was the first full-time tennis athlete at Alabama. And I was there with one of my USA teammates who just so happens to be a baller in both tennis and basketball. So she was there on scholarship for basketball. So I had one friend, I knew one person. And from there, it was it was really different. There was a lot of culture shock, but it was an amazing experience to be part of just a team because in tennis and wheelchair sports, it's hard to find that community. But at Alabama, we have around, I think there's actually 3 or 4 different sports right now or teams, and you can find comfort in athletes your age kind of going through the same thing. Of course, you experience that with having a college team, but then kind of adding another layer to that of having disabled peers helping you navigate life. That was really good for me.
Yeah, and that was kind of leading me into my next question. Before you started talking about that, what was it like moving from home in Hawaii to Alabama? And it sounds like that was probably a tremendous support group for you. But yeah, I mean, what was that like? Because you grew up in Hawaii, and this is pretty far away from home too. So that's another big challenge.
Yeah, it was really far and it's actually very difficult to get back home just because of how far away it is. But I wanted to make that leap. I was kind of tired of being stuck on an island and I wanted to change and it actually opened my eyes to a lot of different things. Because sometimes when you're stuck on an island, you're set in your ways and we're a little removed from the world, which is nice. We're kind of in paradise. But when I came to Alabama, the first thing that was really different to me was the food. I had to get used to eating a lot of barbecue and fried foods. So that was different but fun. And then the people, the hospitality is very similar to Hawaii, but it's also very different because it's like the Southern hospitality where they're willing to go out of their way and make you feel welcome. So I thought that was really fun. And then besides that, just the culture of the university was really great because as you might know, we're really good at certain sports like football. So they also treated us very differently. At Hawaii, I was trying to convince all of my professors that I needed to take off a week here and there to go to a tournament versus when I'm at Alabama, they understand I'm a student athlete and they help me navigate my way through college.
Yeah. And then so clearly Alabama was great to you. Um, did you find that you got a lot better at Alabama, or how did the timeline work with going to not Tokyo, Rio?
Rio.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I transferred over in 2014, and around that time I was having a little bit of a struggle trying to find the motivation to train at my highest level. It was very difficult to find the resources being kind of alone in my island. I had my friends, I had family and coaches that were all willing to help me, but I didn't have the resources that I needed to take it to the next level. And as an athlete, I'm sure you've experienced this too. There are certain things that happen in your life. Maybe you go to a specific event, you switch coaches or anything. So that was kind of one of my big leaps in my tennis career where I transferred over and I had a new coach. I had consistent training, weightlifting, and all these different resources that were available to me that kind of helped me focus on being a student and an athlete at the same time. So at that point, I made my big jump and I received a wild card to go to the Rio Paralympics later that year. Sorry. There's a dog playing a toy
Oh,
right now.
yeah, okay. So getting a wild card, um, and this is at the same time that you've got more resources, you've got a great coach and a great training scenario. How do you get picked for the wild card? I'm not as familiar with that. How does that work?
Yeah, so in tennis, our structure of qualifying for the Paralympics is based solely on rankings. How many tournaments can you play a year? What are your best results from those rankings? But for wildcards, it's really exciting because I was not able to travel to as many tournaments as some other players out there because I was, still a college athlete and I didn't have the resources available to me. But I had some pretty good results at some of those tournaments, and my national coaches recognized that. So they put the bid in and asked if I could be nominated to complete a doubles team, essentially. And I didn't actually know that they did that for me that year. I guess I was just enjoying my time as a college athlete. And when I got the call, it was because of a last minute dropout. So I was essentially an alternate. He called me about less than a month before, and he said, my national coach, he said, "Hey, like I have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is I didn't order any clothes for you." I was like, "Okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but okay, what's the good news?" And he said, "The good news is you're going to the Paralympics." So it was actually a really exciting opportunity for me. Because I think when you're also like the wild card athlete, you don't have any pressure on you. You didn't have to maintain a certain level of play and ranking to get there, and I was able to enjoy my experience as someone who wasn't supposed to be there in the first place.
Well, clearly you were supposed to be there, and that's really cool. So did you have any prior dreams of being a Paralympian, or it almost sounds like it was just such a pleasant surprise to you. You were enjoying the moment as you should, but you weren't overly focused on getting there, your rankings, and it almost is so true to the fact that if you just trust the process and you take care of what you need to do each day, you'll end up where you want to go. But yeah, like was this a dream of yours?
It was. It went through stages of being a dream. I think when I first started, that same national coach, I met him at a junior camp when I was 16 years old in 2010. And that was my first introduction to what the elite pathway looked like for me. And so the way that he sold it to me, the way he convinced me to be a part of Team USA was this is what could happen. You could get to the highest stage of competition in wheelchair tennis, and you're coming into opening ceremonies, you're wearing USA on your back, and you've got the whole crowd chanting USA, USA, while you walk in. And so that became kind of a vision, but I didn't really know what it took to get there. Like I said, in 2014, a couple years prior, I wasn't performing at my highest, so that wasn't at the forefront of my mind. But when I finally got there, when I experienced the story, the visual story that he had told me, it was actually very exciting. And I wish I had actually gone through that process before Tokyo, because then when I was training and trying to qualify for Tokyo was much more stressful to me because I felt like I was chasing points and chasing matches. Like I have to win this match, I have to get to this round in order to be this ranking, and it's a much more stressful process that I didn't enjoy quite as much as Rio.
Yeah, and that's so interesting and so true to sports. It's almost when you focus on the result too much, it almost backfires on you.
Mhm.
So when you were trying to qualify for Tokyo, were you still at Alabama?
I was, and obviously we all remember this time where COVID hit, and so Tokyo was supposed to be in 2020, and it got delayed a year, and we didn't even know if it was happening. I was about three-quarters of the way through our qualification process. So to qualify for the Paralympics, it's June to June from the year prior to the year of. And I was at a tournament in March when they sent us all home. And I think that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me because I was at a stage where if I had just went straight through and played the Paralympics that year, I probably would have quit tennis at that point. Um, because I was so stressed about it. It was eating away at me and my physical health, my mental health, and everything like that. But when COVID hit and we were all told to stay home and not be outside, I took 6 weeks off from tennis, which is the longest break that I had ever had away from the sport since I had started training competitively, and it was the best thing for me. I continued my physical training. You do those home workouts and the garage workouts. The first time I stepped out on that tennis court after 6 weeks, I truly remembered what it was like to enjoy tennis again.
It's so funny hearing you talk about that too, because I went through something similar in that time. I think COVID was such a difficult time for a lot of people, and especially anyone who's hopeful for the Olympics. I was hoping to qualify for the Olympic trials, and of course, it got postponed. And I had also almost like self-sabotage myself, just putting so
Mhm.
much pressure on trying to hit a certain mark. And I was a pole vaulter. And so you're so focused on achieving a height and kind of like the same thing for you, just focused on getting a win or getting the rankings. And then it almost just creates this negative headspace and it's so difficult to perform and enjoy. But that's where taking that time away and just remembering what you love about the sport, I'm sure
Mhm.
has made a world of difference. So, how has going through that experience helped you in your game today or even just after that?
So it definitely helped me when I got to Tokyo. I was definitely happy and relieved that I was at this goal. I had set this goal for myself to retire shortly after. And even though I actually lost both of my matches when I went to Tokyo, but I wasn't that upset. Sure, I was upset in the moment. I definitely thought I could have done better, but I was kind of at peace after that moment. Um, I was able to kind of cope with the stress of being there. I wasn't putting so much emphasis on winning matches anymore. I was happy where I was. I also started talking to our USA Sports psych at that point in time, so he probably helped a lot with that as well as the break. But after that, I actually played a couple more years, longer than I had intentionally, longer than I had meant to play. I was going to retire immediately and start a career after that, but I actually ended up playing for 2 more years, as well as I now work for our national governing body, the USTA. So for me, tennis has had such a great impact on my well-being, my development, everything like that. And it gave me the best experiences of my life, from tournaments to being on teams at Alabama. I really want to be able to share that with everybody else. So I work in our player development department now. And I want to be able to um, sorry again, that's the dog. I want to be able to, just be able to get athletes to their goals, just like how my support staff, how my team and my coaches were able to do for me.
Yeah, so being in the player development department with the USTA, so are you working directly with athletes in that position?
I work more in an administrative role, so I do get to work with athletes who are developing on the junior pathway. So we work with camps there and national camps, as well as the ones that train directly on campus. But I'm not on court with them as a coach. I know those coaches are the ones that have the biggest influence in an athlete's life, but I definitely am excited to be a part of this department. It's still sort of new to me. It's a year and a half in. But it's really exciting for me to be able to just enjoy tennis in a different capacity on the other side.
Well, yeah, I mean, congrats on getting that position and still getting to keep tennis a huge part of your life. And it's different being on the other side of it, I'm sure, from playing, but all of your experiences are so valuable and like it's so worth sharing those. And I'm curious, going back in your experience at Rio versus your experience at Tokyo. Rio, I think you made it to finals or you had a couple wins in Rio, right? And then Tokyo, um, last two matches, but this was after overcoming huge mental battle and kind of finding yourself in your love for the sport again. Um, which, which, how are the experiences different? Was one sweeter than the other?
I definitely there were different levels of satisfaction. I think Tokyo was more, I made it here. This was my goal. I had been training 5 years for that tournament at that point. I was happy to qualify and I was happy to make it there. But again, I didn't enjoy it as much as the tournament in Rio where I had found out about it 3 weeks prior. So Rio was more of an experience of I'm here, this is exciting, let's soak it all in. I had no idea what to expect at that point. I experienced my first opening ceremonies. I experienced the village for the first time and just really seeing the like how big the Paralympics are. Because when you look at your sport and you're focusing on how do I qualify, like how do I play these tournaments and everything, you're just focusing on just a percentage of this huge competition. And so you're surrounded when you go to the cafeteria and you're surrounded by all the best athletes of every single sport of every single nation. You start to develop this sense of a broader community, and I think that was like the biggest thing for me. And in Tokyo, yeah, I knew what to expect a little bit more, but at the same time, we weren't really allowed to interact with anybody
Oh
because we
yeah.
were all wearing our masks and we couldn't even eat next to our teammates. We had these glass um barricades while
Yeah.
we ate. But in Rio, I was able to talk to so many people. I was able to go to so many different sports that I've never seen in person before. And I'm sure like it might be like Paralympic specific as well. Like I was able to watch wheelchair rugby or sitting volleyball and goalball and all these different things, and I was able to cheer on USA as a whole, and then find more purpose as an American athlete beyond that. So that was exciting for me.
Yeah, and it's probably so cool to see the Paralympics at that stage. You don't even really get to see it too much, but then just to
Mhm.
see it at that level and see how many people are involved is probably very moving, and especially for being involved in it yourself. And so having these experiences, you've definitely had some ups and downs, and overall have really turned everything into a positive. What advice or yeah, I guess what piece of advice would you give to any athlete out there who's maybe going through a tough time in their sport and trying to, whether they're trying to set goals for themselves or just trying to find themselves through sport? What advice would you give to someone who's just going through maybe a challenging time in sport?
I mean, similar to how I experienced it during COVID, it's just finding a way to enjoy the sport because if you're not enjoying it anymore, or there's no reason for you to love what you're doing, then I don't think it's worth it at that point. And whatever it is, I mean, like making a lot of money could really fuel you and that can really make you happy. But just finding that enjoyment. And then also on top of that, like you said, setting goals, like setting reasonable goals, but at the same time, really focusing on the progress over the goals because it is hard to make all your goals in life, especially if they're really tangible, like making that height on a pole vault. Whatever progress you can find is really important as well because sometimes you don't reach those goals as quick as you want to.
Yeah, and so having made it to the Olympics twice, is this something that looking at back at a younger version of yourself, would you ever have imagined that you would achieve?
When I was younger, I didn't even know what adapted sports were. My mother enrolled me in all these like activities because my brother was trying all the sports, and it's funny and ironic because he's actually not the sports one in the family. But she wanted to be able to, enroll me in like singing and acting classes just so I would have something to do in the afternoons, and I absolutely hated it. I was like, this is not the life for me. I don't want to be performing in front of other people. So I definitely did not know that this was the path for me. So when I first picked up that racket and or sat in that wheelchair and played basketball, um, it was definitely a strange world for me, but I'm so happy that it happened.
Well, what do you think it was that really captivated you as far as sports? Was it tennis itself? Because I know you tried basketball, or was it just sports in general?
I do love the competitive aspect about sports, and I just love the fact that it is kind of it's a challenge, but it's fun at the same time. And there's so many moving parts. But for tennis, especially, it was just something that I could do as a disabled person. There's a lot of things that people tell you no in life, and so with tennis, we're all equal on the playing field. And I had different things like goals that I could work towards and different skills that I could build upon and get better at. And I just really enjoyed making that progress and working really hard at something and seeing results.
I love your story, and it just shows that you can truly accomplish anything you set your mind to, and there are no limits. And you've lived such a rich life through sport. It's so cool the places it has taken you. Do you plan on continuing to play tennis for fun in the future, or what's that look like?
So I'm trying really hard to set little goals for myself, like maybe play once a week, but or find a league to join. And I definitely do want to be able to continue tennis in a fun way and just find motivation through other ways. Like I really would like to maintain a skill or stay fit, or just play because tennis is something that I still am decently good at. So I like to play it. I like to find different communities. Like I said, I moved to Florida a little over a year ago, so it helps me meet people and socialize. So I definitely will not be straying away from it anytime soon.
Oh, love to hear that. That is so awesome. Well, if anyone's looking to follow you or learn a little bit about your story or what you're doing with the USTA, where would be a good place that someone might be able to follow you or get in touch with you?
Well, I have my fun life, I guess, and I do Instagram.
Okay.
Um, I think it's Baroness 808, and then I also have my professional life. So I created my LinkedIn, and that's a thing that I have to do now, and I have to keep up with that. But this will be a good reminder for me to check all my messages and get in touch with anybody because I know that there are people out there that still have questions about where to get involved with adaptive sports and wheelchair tennis and things like that. And I just want to be able to help as many people as I can.
Absolutely. And just your story is so inspiring, and we are so grateful for you to be able to share that with us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Well, yeah, thank you. And maybe we'll have to bring you back sometime. But
Of
yeah,
course.
it's been great talking to you, Shelby, and we really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. If you like this episode, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review so others can find us more easily. It really helps us get the word out and it means a lot to us.
We are always looking for new stories to share here on our show. So, if you know someone that would be a great guest, tell us their story by nominating them on our website at sportfuelslife.com. Thanks
Thanks
for
for listening.
listening.